Welcome to another edition of Soul Fire Ascension with Raven and Lisa Love Light. Raven is an aura, past life regression, and clinical hypnotherapist, a quantum galactic Akashic reader, raw Reiki angelic alchemy healing practitioner, and Yushui Reiki master. Raven also offers one-on-one spiritual consultations. Book your free 15-minute discovery Zoom call with Raven at ravenshealingarts.com. Lisa is an aura practitioner, raw Reiki quantum galactic Akashic reader, Yushui Reiki master, and offers one-on-one soul coaching sessions. For questions or booking sessions, you can message her at sacredheartquantumhealing.com or at myabundanceflows247@aol.com. You can watch Soul Fire Ascension on YouTube and Rumble. You can also listen to Soul Fire Ascension on Spotify. Please do like, share, and subscribe, and we hope you enjoy the show. Greetings. Welcome to another edition of Soul Fire Ascension with Raven and Lisa Love Light. Lisa's having some technical difficulties, but we're going to go on with the show, and we hope that she comes on in and gets them adjusted. And let me introduce you to Therone. I'm so sorry. To Therone with his video file. Soul Fire Ascension welcomes Author Therone Shellman with the 20-Day Reset Workbook. The 20-Day Reset Workbook is a format and program in which to reprogram your thinking to clearly define objectives, rid yourself of destructive habits, replace them with healthy habits, and most of all, create a plan and act on it. Replicate this process to complete other objectives through effective processes and systems. This journal has the power to change your life if you work it. And once you begin to work it, you'll develop the mindset and tools to make permanent life changes. Live April 18th, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you missed the live show, you can catch the replay on YouTube and Rumble at Soul Fire Ascension, or listen to Soul Fire Ascension on Spotify. Don't forget, like, share, and subscribe. Yay! Let's see, get this off the screen. Sorry. There we go. Welcome back, Therone. This is your second time on Soul Fire Ascension. And the first time was great, and I'm sure this time's even going to be better because you have the 20-day workbook. You want to tell us a little bit about the 20-day workbook?
Okay. First, I would like to say thank you for having me again on the show. The first show, we actually spoke about Third Eye Awakening, the first book to the 5-book series dealing with self-development in different areas. This workbook, the 20-Day Reset Workbook, I came to thinking about this because I realized that everything that we do in life involves processes. And it's a reality. The better we learn to think and to develop processes that work more effectively, the more we can accomplish in life. That's a fact. I started off my work career as a quality assurance inspector, and then I went on to become a production supervisor. Now, working as a quality assurance inspector, my job was all about processes. A lot of people think when they think of quality assurance, they think of you just looking over quality. That's part of it. But it's also when you're in a manufacturing environment, or if you're in the tech world, it's also looking at processes, looking at what employees do in relation to the policies that the company has, or uh, whether it's regulations. Like when I worked in the pharmaceutical industry, it was whether the employees are following FDA policies, if they're following the standard operating procedures that the company put in place for operational goals. So, in thinking about that and realizing what my job was, it wasn't to be a police. It was really to look at the processes that were taking place in the work environment, and also develop better processes. Um, this is how companies become better when they develop better processes. This is how personal relationships become better when you start to develop a better understanding of communication and action, etc. So this is what the workbook is about. It's about coming to terms with the processes that you have in different areas of your life, and really taking note and taking heed, and developing better processes. For instance, in the work environment, one of my jobs were, if we were doing something that took 10 steps, sometimes this becomes monotonous for employees. So we will look at how can we do that same task, complete that same task in 7 or 6 steps without losing quality, without uh, messing with the different processes. So these are the things that, when you think about this workbook and developing processes, you start to think about, how can I do something better? How can I accomplish a task better without losing the quality or losing what I'm striving to do?
Nice. And so is that what made you write this workbook?
Yeah. And, in relation to my work career, but also in regards to my personal life, I started to think about, things that I've done personally and how I've developed better processes. And I realized that, just like with the Third Eye Awakening series, I realized that with this, it always, believe it or not, they say, I believe that through my personal situations and circumstances, I'm always thinking about how something that relates to me can also be beneficial to other people. So that's how I came to write this workbook, because I realized that this is applicable to everyone. I don't care where you're at in your life, what religion, what gender, you know, everybody deals with processes every day, from the time you get up to the time you go to rest.
So can you give us some examples of some of the process?
Okay. For instance, I was I'm on LinkedIn, and I was reading an article about 2 or 3 days ago, and it was about this young lady. She's a professional, and she travels around the world she said that she spends more time on a plane than in a car. And one of the things that she was doing was using discounts, etc. And instead of flying first class, she would take flights. She did this for a little while. She would find discounted flights and that weren't first class. But then when she started to look at her productivity level, she realized that her trying to save a few nickels here and there was costing her a whole lot more than if she flew first class. And she gave an example. In flying first class, she had her paperwork out on the table because they give you more room in the first class. So now she could do her work. And she realized that when she took these flights on the discounts, she was cramped up in the space. She couldn't do her work. She couldn't think. So that flight that maybe took her 2, 3, 4 hours, she lost productivity for them 2, 3, 4 hours. Whereas when she was on the flight doing first class, she's doing her work. She's getting ahead. And that's, when she started to equate that to what her overall objectives are, she realized that it was better for her to spend that money on first class flights instead of trying to cut corners and save a couple of nickels and dollars.
Well, that's interesting. Yeah. I mean, and I can honestly see that because she would have the time and the space to get all that stuff done. We have a comment from a viewer. It says, David Price says, I have a new trainee that started working with me almost 2 weeks ago. He's had 1 day off so far. I've tried to show him how to do a few things, but he's looking at his phone instead. I don't think he listens to me properly either. Yeah.
Distractions. If you're distracted with anything, it's you're not going to be able to get to productivity that you would get if you're focused. This is why, in school, a lot of jobs as well, they tell you no phones.
Well, I think if you're not focused and you're distracted, you're not going to do as good of a job, and you could make a lot of mistakes too.
Of course.
Greetings, Lisa.
Hey, Lisa.
We cannot hear you.
Of course not.
We have
Greetings.
Oh, yay, there you are. Lisa has some lag behind us. So we've decided from now on, if Lisa has a question, she's going to put it up as a banner. And that way, if she can type fast enough, I don't know. So anyway, the workbook, it's 20 days. Why 20 days?
Why 20 days?
Yeah.
I'm going to read you from the author's note at the beginning. So,
Sure.
Okay, so the European Journal of Social Psychology has found that it takes on average 66 days to form a habit, but studies have also shown it can take from 18 to 254 days. So it depends on where the individual is at mentally and as far as their psychology level and dealing with their life. Like I'm a person, because I've been in work environments that demanded a lot of focus, and I started off my work career as a quality assurance inspector. I'm the type of person that I could sit for hours and just focus on a task, which may be hard for a lot of people. A lot of people need to be around the people, a lot of people. I'm not that type of person because of how I trained my mind, but that comes from practice and being in environments where that's necessary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I can see that. In my work and what I do, I have to focus on what I'm doing. Like totally, I have to focus on that because I'm dealing with I'm dealing with animals. Lisa says, "What inspired you to create this book?"
I spoke a little about that earlier, but one thing I definitely would like to mention is that from childhood, we're taught what to think instead of how to think. So it's it's impossible for us to develop processes that are effective, or even go back to the drawing board and realize when we're not getting the results that we really want to get. So that all boils down to processes.
Nice.
Think about it. When you look at companies and you see the companies that are getting the best results, it's because they've really taken the time to work on processes.
And I
Or
like
even
that.
in
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I really like that you said that we were taught what to think and not how to think, because that's actually so true in so many circumstances, not only just in school, but in life in general. We're always taught what to think and how to be, and not how to think. So
Yeah.
I think that was a really good point.
It's programming.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, go, in school you learn, go to this program or do that. It's really about programming. It's about putting you in a certain box instead of, the best organizations are the organizations that allow people to uh, expand their thinking. I worked for an organization called Nature's Bounty, and at the time they were the second largest manufacturer in the world of vitamins. And they had an employee suggestion box in all their manufacturing facilities, etc. And who knows how to do the job better than the people that are on the floor and the people that are doing the job every day. So they took a lot of the ideas from the everyday people that do the job, and so many times you have companies that have management and they write stuff on the board, and in their mind their equation is the best, and the people who actually do the jobs, they don't listen to them.
Yeah, yeah. And I do agree about the programming, because after all, school is our first programming, where we're taught what to think and what to do. And it's our first programming. And so can you give us an idea of maybe what the first step in your workbook is? Or
Okay, so for the first step in my workbook, and I'm actually going to read, and I put on day one, I'm taking full responsibility for my wellness. Below are some of the things I will work on the next 20 days. List all of your objectives starting with one. So the first step is to realize that you have an issue. We all have issues, and that we're going to take responsibility. We want to make change. Nothing changes unless you decide changes need to happen, and two, you're willing to make a change. So the first thing is to accept that there needs to be changes taking place.
mm-hmm.
Responsibility.
I think that's, yeah, absolutely. And so this would be for changes that you want to make in your life, or is it for things that you want to do in your life differently? Like, say you wanted to get a new job. Could
Well,
you use the workbook for that?
okay. So the workbook, when we talk about changes, we're talking about in totality the changes that you want to take place in your life, whether it's health, whether it's better relationships, um, situations with your job, etc. Um, once you learn, put it this way, once you learn how to think more effectively and develop processes, you can basically apply the same methodology to anything you want to do in life, because everything that we do in life is processes.
Okay.
Like for instance, look at career, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
You're a cashier working at a supermarket. You're dealing with sales, you're dealing with customer service, you're dealing with calculating money. Now, most people that are in that situation throughout their life, they have the assumption that they can only work in a supermarket. But the reality is that if you're dealing with sales, whether you're selling sneakers or selling sheets, you could go into real estate or selling cars, etc. So it's really a process in thinking, being thinking outside the box and going broader. So when I talk about how you can apply one process that you learn to another environment, another situation, it's all applicable.
Okay. Lisa, you have any questions?
Um, I do. I always have questions.
Yeah.
I do, and I understand what Therone is saying, because to me, perhaps it would help people learn how to organize their thoughts better. Would you say?
You,
And may I ask, how many pages is the work?
the workbook is 53 pages actually. So it's something that I think when I put projects together, I understand that we live in a microwave society. Um, I also understand that people's the average person, their attention span is a lot less than what it used to be. Um, I also understand that people have a lot less patience. They want to get to whatever it is they need to get to as quick as possible. So when
Yeah.
I put my projects together, I don't put it together with a bunch of pages with a lot of empty space and a lot of information that you don't need. This booklet is a process in itself. And if you work it, it'll help you with not just accomplishing one task, but in the thinking, like Lisa said, how to think better and apply it to other tasks that you want to do.
Exactly. Yes. Sam Blue says, Lisa, you nailed it. Thank you, Sam. And so let's see. What else is in the book that we should know about?
Okay, so I want to take you through the days. We're not going to go through every day, but
Okay.
I want to show you the process. So we spoke about process one. That's accepting responsibility,
Yes.
and then developing, a number list of things that you want to accomplish. So day two, one day at a time. Not even the world was built in one day. Today, and then you put the date. I will focus on being present and being conscious of the choices I make. Right now, right this moment, I will commit myself to the changes I seek. Task for the day. Focus solely on being in the present moment throughout the whole day. As Dave mentioned, with his coworker being on the phone and he thinks that he's not paying attention. If we're gonna make changes and if we're gonna work on developing processes, we need to get in the mindset of being awake and in the now and present. And that is a task. Because a lot of times people are daydreaming and that's something that a person may have gone through their life in that stage. So just thinking of now I got to start really being focused day to day and awake, because that's the only way you can make changes.
I agree. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then, day 3 days of mindfulness is a charm. The next 7 days, I will focus on objective one, written down on day one. Day three, take a break to reflect. So for the first 7 days, you're actually focusing on your first objective and working on that objective.
Mm-hmm. And being present in the moment.
And being present in the moment.
Okay. Yeah.
So day 4, after day 3, you've taken the time to reflect on, what you've done the first 2 days. So day 4, nothing works unless you work it. What steps have you been taking to accomplish objective one? List them as actionable details. So it's not just important to think about something or even to work on something, but just like a scientist, understand that what we're doing is actually like a science project, your life. So you're writing down the actionable details that you have started to work on, because now as the days progress, you're going to start gauging whether things are working or not. And if they are or are not, what changes can you make to tweak? It's just like I don't know if you're into, for instance, you're into NASCAR, for instance. You watch what the people are doing, or the car may be running perfect, it may be having problems, but when it goes to the pit stops, they're talking to the driver, they're looking at the car, they're doing tweaking. It's the same thing with goals and objectives. In order to get to the process that we want to accomplish, we're taking responsibility, we're making lists, we're doing actionable goals, and then we're evaluating.
I say, yeah. We have a comment from Sam. Sam Blue says it's so difficult to be in the present moment, and it takes constant practice and a positive mindset. This book is going to help many people. I agree with you, Sam.
Yes, it's definitely a process. It's a process for anybody. Like we were speaking before the show started, that even for people that are along the way, you still get caught up in the moments, because if you have gone to school for 12 years of your life, and then another 7 years of your life you've been thinking a certain way, and then all of a sudden you're 40 years old, you start making changes, and you made these changes, you're 50, so now 10 years you've been thinking a certain way, but for 40 years you've been thinking a whole different way. And sometimes them habits and them thoughts come when you hit rough patches in your life and you start to digress. And I find myself in situations like that, and I have to check myself. So it's hard.
Yeah, I call that old tapes. I go back to old tapes, sometimes. And sometimes it's easy to revert back to the old tapes because that's what you've done so long and it's so comfortable. And so it is difficult to make those changes, to not go back to those old tapes, and to do the things that you are doing in this book. Because we're so used to all of the programming that this book may not be part of that programming, and having to think differently,
And another part of that is that we're not one-dimensional beings. There's many levels to who we are, and we come across other people, other environments that triggers that trigger the past within us, and sometimes it takes time. Sometimes it takes time, to sit back and say, "Oh, I see where I'm going. I gotta make a detour."
You got to change it up. And so I guess this workbook could be sort of a map to help you change your mode of thinking and to get on a different course, because it's just kind of like what they say in an AA meeting. You continue to do the same things over and over and over again, expecting something different
results.
And that's insanity, And that's, unfortunately, that's what a lot of us do. And I myself have fallen into that trap too. Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting this different results. I've learned a little bit more. Sometimes it takes me a while, but I think maybe a workbook like this could be very helpful.
Yes, and like I said, I actually apply. I believe that all of my books, definitely, we spoke about the Third Eye Awakening. The whole series of books is filled with a lot of my personal experiences, and I even go back and read, because it's called I call it re-educating yourself.
Yeah,
we could learn something 5 years ago, and it's important that we go back and visit that education, because we're going down, like I said, we're not one-dimensional beings. So our travels in life bring us down different paths, and sometimes we can forget what we know.
Yeah, I agree with that. Lisa, anything you'd like to say?
I'm just, of all of the books that you wrote, Therone, where does this one come in? Because you wrote 15 books. When did you do this one? Was this more in the beginning, or?
No, this is one of my latest books. This actually,
okay.
My two latest books is Street Knowledge and All My Tears, Poetry and Thoughts. This is the book before that, so this is the 13th book.
Wow. Because
Ooh,
with
awesome.
reading Third Eye Awakening, I learned that you actually brought yourself up into different stages and different mindsets. You know, you were at one mindset, being a street kid, and then you grew a little bit and you grew out of that and you started dressing differently. So, you know, you have brought yourself up to who you wanted to be, I feel like. And
Yes.
have
Go
you
ahead.
have you used the principles in this workbook to do that?
Um, I believe that this workbook is part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's not all of it. Just like Third Eye Awakening, I wrote in 2012, and it was just a piece of my journey. But we're humans. You know what makes humans different than other beings is our consciousness,
Mm-hmm.
our ability to have self realization.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and this is what gives us the ability to be able to change our conditions and circumstances instead of, like Freud says, being a product of your environment. You know, we can be a product of our environment if we stay at a certain level mentally. But once we get to the point of realizing our God consciousness and develop that self realization that you can change your conditions and circumstances by realizing that it all starts here.
Yes.
And, you know, and that's what I was showing the Third Eye Awakening. You know, even as a young man, I'm creating myself. You know, I'm changing my conditions and circumstances, but it's changing up here first. I'm seeing myself, you know, getting past that stage of selling drugs and doing all, and knowing that that's just going to be a certain part of my life, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a progression. And
Yeah.
and when people, and when you look at people, and I think that when people can tap into that consciousness, those are the people that you see that, you know, are actually taking responsibility for their, you know, their manifest destiny,
Yes.
whatever it is. You know, you hear so many times, I've read so many books, etc., about business leaders, etc., or whatever, and they say that they saw themselves getting there. It could have been 20 years earlier. They knew that they were going to take themselves down certain paths. And that
Mm-hmm.
started with the first thing I mentioned in that book is the self responsibility, accepting responsibility.
I agree with that. Yeah.
So
Uh, Lisa, did you want to say something?
I was just going to agree with him in the regards of taking responsibility and owning up. You know, there's no right or wrong. It's just realizing, okay, I did that. Maybe that wasn't the greatest. And I want to move away from that. I want to evolve. I want to expand. And I just feel like this is such a great time for him to visit us with this book because we're in the springtime. Everything is growing and blooming. And it's time for, you know, this will help people realize that change is good. It's okay to change. And when you start actually taking accountability for your actions and your thoughts, putting them on paper, you show up for yourself. And that's what it
Yes.
sounds like this workbook is. You're showing up for yourself. You're making a commitment to yourself for those 20 days plus so that you can bring positive growth and change.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
very true. And day 5, I mentioned habits are the foundation to everything we do. Psychology states it takes 21 days on average to break a habit, and it takes on average 66 days to form a habit. What habits are you developing to help you complete objective 1? So another aspect of this is coming to terms with the bad habits that we have that are in the way of our objectives. You want to have a good relationship with your friend, your partner, etc. But there are certain things that you're doing or the way you think that are getting in the way of that. So it's like you said, it's owning up to your self responsibility and your capability to change. A lot of changes don't happen in people's life, not because of external factors. There are certain things that, if you're born into a country that has a caste system or whatever, there's certain things that you can't do but we're in the United States, so a lot of the negatives that people have that are in their life is really on them.
Yeah. Yeah. And I like how, because it's a workbook, you're writing it down, because sometimes seeing it in black and white makes a big difference. And when you're writing it down, you see it in black and white and it's right in front of you and staring you in your face. And it's good to be honest when you do something like that, because, if you're not honest, it's not going to work for you.
Of course, there's a saying, a man who lies to himself first. So when you want to look at your conditions and circumstances and whatever situations that you want to change, you have to be 100% honest with yourself. That's the only way that you got to face the problem, which is you. Whatever it is that's stopping you from getting the results that you seek, you have to accept, responsibility for that and be honest. And that's how you could get to making some real changes.
Well, and a lot of us are self-sabotagers. So
I've done that.
and, writing it down and seeing it in black and white again, you can actually see how you're sabotaging yourself as well, I think.
Yes.
Miss Deborah says, greetings. I'm enjoying this conversation. I've been working to recognize patterns. Do you feel there's a relationship between habits and patterns? Maybe that's a silly question. I don't think that's a silly question at all.
No. Definitely, habits form patterns. So they're like brother and sister.
Yeah.
Because the habits that we have create our conditions and circumstances, so it's a wild cycle.
Yeah, I agree with that. Totally. And Sam says, opening your inner self and accepting our mistakes and seeing ourselves being reborn. I agree with that too. Therone, you have something to say about that one?
Oh, definitely. Well, they say this: if you're not making mistakes, you're not trying. And yeah, another thing that I want to say is so important. I've had to learn this with myself. With every new thing that we learn, with every new task that we partake in, we're amateurs, and you're gonna make mistakes, and that's just the way it is. When you look at somebody that does something so well, at one time they were really crappy at doing it. They didn't know what they were doing. And
Mm-hmm.
in our minds, we trick ourselves. This is what stops us from doing so many things, because we don't want to look like a fool. We don't want to look silly. We don't want to make mistakes or be a failure. Everybody has been a failure. I don't care who it
Everybody.
is that you look at what and what they do. At one point, they didn't know how to do it. That's just how you get to the point of being a novice to being a professional or
Yeah.
being good. That's it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I know that God, I've failed so many times, but what is it they say? Failure is first, let's say, it's first try or something like that.
Even as you go along your path and you become well at something, you're gonna have missteps. Jordan, for instance, Jordan said that he is not the success that he is. th- no, he said that he's the success that he is because of the fact that he missed more shots than he took, but he was never scared to take the shot. So even in his highest day, he was missing shots. And that's how life is. And if we could get that trickery, out of our mind to say that we have to know everything, that we have to do everything correct, then we could get to the point of making some real changes in our life, because you do develop that fear
Mhm.
of stepping outside the norm. Even though you know that whatever it is that you're doing, whatever it is that you're thinking, isn't producing the best results for you, we're still scared to step out and say, uh, maybe this thing that I'm trying maybe turn out worse than what I'm doing right now. But that's okay, because if you're taking responsibility for change, you're going to get there. You're going to get to where you need to go, because you're going to keep tweaking. You're going to keep working on whatever it is. Um, for instance, like in the trades, you have from a novice and it goes all the way on to apprentice. There's a reason for them steps.
Mhm. Sam Lewis says failure is the first step to success, Raven. Yes.
That's
That's
true.
what I was thinking of. And I know, and you're like, you got to go through those steps. And the other thing that I have found, like when I'm writing things down, I ask myself a question: why am I doing this? And so I write down an answer, and then with that answer I ask myself another question, and I try to go deeper into it, and I find the true answers come all the way down at the bottom of that list of questions.
And what you just said right there is another thing that I want to get to is be patient with yourself. Sometimes it could take a day, it could take days, weeks, a month, it could take you years to get to a certain mythology or point for yourself that really works.
Mm-hmm.
I've been writing books for a while, and it was a month ago that I just discovered something. I'm not going to say because it's a business thing, but it took me years to really come to something in my mind in regards to what I'm doing business wise with my publishing. So be patient with yourself.
That's true, because gosh, we're so hard on ourselves sometimes, and people say, well, we're our own worst critic. Well, if you treated somebody like you treated yourself, would they be your friend? So yeah, don't be so hard on yourself. Lisa says, is the mind the common denominator in your books?
It's funny that you said that, because I had a publicist ask me one time, like about 3 years ago. She said, "Oh, she said, I know you write fiction as well as nonfiction, but are all your books spiritual?" And it made me think. And when you asked me, is the mind the common denominator in your books, I would say that part of that is true. The other part of that is that all of my books deal with the supreme consciousness or God or whatever people want to call the supreme power. So yes, the mind and God, the supreme conscious, has everything to do with all of my books, because I'm always striving to get to the point of not just thinking at a higher level, but operating in a higher level.
Beautiful.
I feel that. I feel that.
David says, I'm back to being a novice. Last week was the first time that I marked out and painted a hockey field. Next week, I have to work on 17 football fields for the first time.
And that's a good thing.
Wow.
Yeah. It's always good to I don't know, go back to the beginning.
It's always good to step outside of your comfort zone, into new environments and new experiences. And what you're going to find is, like I mentioned with this book, once you start developing a new way of thinking, a new way of going about things, you're going to see how you can apply that science, that knowledge in different environments. And that's what's going to take the fear out of just doing other things. Like for 3 years, from 2021 to 2024, I was an independent contractor, and I worked through two 1099 apps, and I did everything from customer service, to warehousing, to light industrial work, different areas in construction. And all of these are separate industries, but yet I come from a quality insurance and a production supervisor background. So I took all of that knowledge that I learned, and I was able to utilize it in these different industries. And once you get comfortable with the knowledge that you possess as a person, and your level of skill in regards to your confidence, as being, a worker, a person, you step into any pair of shoes, whether it's boots, I could put on a pair of boots, or put on a suit. It don't matter to me, or put on a jogging suit. I feel comfortable. But I didn't always feel comfortable. There was a time when a tie, come on, I couldn't wear no tie.
Yep, you went from sneakers and jeans to loafers to, you actually just changed your whole life.
Yeah. And now I could pretty much go into any environment and feel comfortable. Like one of the things I'm doing right now is I'm doing a political canvassing and working on campaigns. And the the last project I worked on was actually a signature political canvassing campaign for a local politician, and it was my first time. And I just applied all the skills I have, and I'm confident with meeting people, and I actually obtained the most signatures for my team. And the owner of the company actually wrote me a reference, etc. But had I not gone, I'm 53. Had I not gone through all the things I've gone through in my life, and I don't think I would have been able to do that. But I brought all them different parts of me to this experience. And that's the thing about learning and applying yourself and being willing to step into different shoes and environments. It's a process.
And a process that you can learn from
That
getting.
anybody for anybody. I'm not just saying it when I speak of these things with myself. I'm making it applicable to anybody else. You could do this, whatever it is that you. Of course. Let's be honest. Um, there's only Jordan is Jordan. LeBron is LeBron or whatever. But we're talking about uh things that are obtainable around you. Just like Dave was speaking about, he's painting the football fields and etc. So obviously, he's an individual who likes the trades and likes to do labor work, etc. So anything within the realms is open to him because that's what he likes to do.
Yeah, and all you have to do is reach out and utilize, your talents and your knowledge that you have gotten. And I think that the workbook could help somebody else do this as well.
Yes, of course. And that's what this workbook is all about. Once you can develop, processes that work with anything that you do, you could sit back and see how you can utilize these same processes to do other things.
Mm-hmm. Nice. So, what message would you like to leave our audience with besides go to Amazon and get this workbook?
Okay. Like I said, we're taught what to think instead of how to think. And it doesn't matter where you're at in your life. It doesn't matter if you're it doesn't your financial situation doesn't matter. Your social situation doesn't matter. We can all, everybody can reach higher levels. Even if you're a CEO of a company, etc. There's always a better way to do things. There's always a higher level, and we're conscious beings. This is one of the things I mentioned in Third Eye Awakening, that our whole reality is based on growing mentally, and self-realization. Once you realize that consciousness is connected to God, then you could understand that you're almost limitless with the things that you can do. But it's first acceptance. You gotta accept responsibility. Them politicians in Washington, the CEO at your job, a company, etc. They have certain powers, but you have power over you. You have power over you, your conditions and circumstances, whatever it is that you want to do. And just step into them shoes. And don't be scared to fail. That's a part of the journey. Slipping, falling, maybe getting a little injured, that's a part of the journey.
Yeah, because I mean, if it's not a little bit of work, then it's not worth it. All that struggle and slipping and falling, and when you finally get to the goal, you go, "Wow, that was worth it."
And that's what builds confidence. Confidence comes from accomplishments. When you strive for things and you start seeing things materialize, that's what builds confidence.
I agree. Well, Therone, it's been wonderful again. We love having you on the show. You're amazing. And everyone, you need to go get this workbook. Go to Amazon and get the workbook. Is there some other place that they can get the workbook besides Amazon?
It's basically on most of the online sellers, Barnes and Noble, Google Play Books. If you just Google, also on my website, www.theronesmedia.com, you could purchase it on there and get a signed copy.
Oh, nice.
Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. We really enjoyed having you.
Okay, I want to say one thing.
Yeah.
If you do purchase the
Say
book,
what you want.
okay, if you do purchase the workbook, I always like reviews. I don't chase reviews. I'm not the person that goes out there, hire publicists to write reviews. I just like, the real readers to write reviews.
Awesome. And Sam Blue says, thank you so much for all the knowledge. It was an amazing show. Yes, it was. It always is,
Yeah.
seems to be with Sheldon on the show. So
Absolutely.
we will see you guys in 2 weeks. Our guest for then would that be Vivian?
Yes. May 2nd.
Vivian Chavez. Oh, yeah. That's going to be an interesting one, too. All righty, everyone. Have a fabulous Easter weekend if you celebrate that. It is Easter weekend, and hope everybody has a fabulous and safe weekend. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was a pleasure being on the show. Thank you.
We hope you have enjoyed watching Soul Fire Ascension with Raven and Lisa Lovelight. You can also watch Soul Fire Ascension on YouTube and Rumble at Soul Fire Ascension, or listen to us on Spotify. Please like, share, and subscribe. Soul Fire Ascension is sponsored by RavensHealingarts.com.